Thank you very much. Listen to what I'm saying just for a minute about that, because it comes to my mind very strongly sitting here. The idea of specificness, okay, versus what we would call extension of singularity or degrees of truth or spiritualness. One of the great moral allegories in American theater is The Music Man. Contained in The Music Man is every single element in regard to spiritual awakening and definitions of God in limited context that there is. It starts out immediately with man in defiance of truth singing a song, "You've Got to Know the Territory," okay, which is a way of saying you must think specifically in a relationship of cause and effect in order to communicate. Okay, the icon of that is the anvil salesman, who is absolutely concrete. I mean, and what is he doing? He's seeking out what? The magician. He is searching for the magician. Why? Because the magician is what? Selling an idea. Okay? A magician doesn't have to know the territory. Does God have to know the territory? That's absurd. He doesn't have to know the territory. So what does the anvil man say? He said he sells band instruments and uniforms and instruction booklets. And the other guy says, what's wrong with that? He doesn't know a concerted thing. He can't read a note, and he doesn't know a flugelhorn from a Jew's harp. Of course not. Why? He has an idea. Okay. Now, when you attempt to convey an idea, you must present duality with a specific problem. So what does he say to Buddy? He said, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. I must give them a problem. Make them recognize what? They have a dilemma, which he does precisely with Song Pool. He gives them an intense problem and shows them that through his idea, he can solve the problem. Isn't that nice? Good morning.
Good morning.
It's very nice to see you. In the allegory of The Music Man. So now here he is in fundamental extension of love and charity and goodness. Why? Because it brings together unity in regard to the community. But what is finally missing? What one element is missing in this? Love. Of course. The element is love is not in there. And that includes love of himself. What occurs then in the symbol of Marion the librarian, who's what? Perceives the goodness that he is doing in his relationship in the community. Subsequently, first intellectually and with apparent discernment, overlooks his shortcomings. Doesn't she? This is love now. A beautiful example of it. She justifies her reactions to him in an intellectual manner. When finally her ideas about God, which is really what they are, become so intense, the denials that are brought directly to her attention by the anvil salesman, by the specific idea that you must look at the parts of this man rather than looking at his wholeness. She finally succumbs totally to the idea of communication with him and loves him totally. What does he do? Responds immediately and loves her. Okay. What happens? The think system or the idea then triumphs, obviously. How could it not do it? Do you see that? That's a very beautiful example of how man, even unbeknownst to himself, will construct allegories of truth. He inevitably does it. What we're really trying to say here, and this is difficult to get, this is what Jesus teaches in Course in Miracles, okay? actually mind idea is totally abstract. The moment that it becomes specific, it dies, because it has established a form of reality in judgment outside of itself. This is precisely what Jesus tries to teach in Course in Miracles. Okay. Now, literally what you have is this. You actually have the choice of being the anvil salesman, which means you literally reduce all life to a single object that you can identify, or which is death, concreteness, or you turn totally to an idea of wholeness or truth or love, which is God. Okay. Now what we're attempting to do with you here is to cause to come about in you, literally, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, morally, in any regard, through action, through passiveness, a recognition momentarily of the containments of truth or God versus death. That's all we do. We may do it in a lot of fashions. We can say to you, for example, if there is a God or truth, there literally cannot be such a thing as death. Period. Now, you will not find that idea here on earth because it's not here. The construction of the earth in your mental process is based on duality or fracturedism or specificism or death. As soon as you limit anything in any regard, you literally die. What we're really trying to get you to do is to think abstractly. And that's difficult because all of your ideas of selfness are based on false discernment in regard to the memory patterns contained in you in relationship to a false identity. Do you see that? Okay. I can see things on the highest level to you. If you have any form of fear in you, it is literally impossible for you to love. The way that Marion came to know him was simply look right through all of his fears, all of the possibilities of him what? Not being exactly what she'd always waited for. In all of the songs that she sings, she's waiting for what? God. Okay? But she doesn't find him where? Outside of herself. She finds him where? In recognition of herself in relationship to the wholeness of the community and her love for him. That's very nice. Okay? You remember this. It's impossible for you to have a form of emotion that is eventually not objective. When you are angry, you must be angry with something, someone, some circumstance, some idea. You may not be able to identify it, okay? But you are, because anger, death, greed must be what? Specific. They must have an object. Okay? Okay? The strange idea contained in Christianity as it's taught today that man as manifest in Jesus is required to go through a physical death process or be persecuted or tormented or in order to resurrect or discover the truth is absurd. Death can never lead to life. If there is such a thing as death, there could never be eternity. There could never be life. It literally could not be. You watch the services that go on at this Easter in the relationship of man's absolute determination to acknowledge death rather than God. He absolutely will do it. He cannot not do it. It's the manner in which he's constructed. I'm going to read you just a minute from Course in Miracles while it's on my mind, because I want you to get this. Well, I could mention this, but this may not help you. Listen. Complete abstraction is the natural condition of the mind. But part of it now is unnatural. It does not look on everything as one. It sees instead but fragments of the whole, for only thus could it invent the partial world you see. The purpose of all seeing is to show you what you wish to see. All hearing but brings to your mind the sounds it wants to hear. Thus were specifics made. And now it is specifics we must use in practicing. You see that? Listen. One brother is all brothers. Every mind contains all mind, for every mind is one. Such is the truth. Yet do these thoughts make clear the meaning of creation? Do these words bring perfect clarity with them to you? What can they seem to you but empty sounds? Pretty perhaps, correct in sentiment, yet fundamentally not understood nor understandable. The mind that taught itself to think specifically can no longer grasp abstraction in the sense that it is all-encompassing. We need to see a little that we can learn a lot. Wow. That's high truth. That's what we're teaching. If you'll come on a day-by-day and moment-by-moment basis to see this, it will help you in relationship with yourself. As you come more and more into your own focus of truth, keep in mind every moment, and as much as you can, is that you literally cannot die. This will help you. Inevitably, you're translating in a false pattern of who you are from yesterday to tomorrow. You cannot do it. Brother Peter literally thinks that he can get up and walk out of here and go somewhere and do something. You all do. You can't. You are dealing with yourself directly in your own limitations, and because of that, are in direct association with your own death. You have to be. You have to be. Course in Miracles, lesson 163. Death is a thought that takes on many forms, often unrecognized. It may appear as sadness, fear, anxiety, or doubt, as anger, faithlessness, and lack of trust, concern for bodies, envy, and all forms in which the wish to be as you are not may come to tempt you. All such thoughts are but reflections of the worshiping of death as Savior and as a giver of release. Embodiment of fear, the host of sin, God of the guilty, and the Lord of all illusions and deceptions, does the thought of death seem mighty. All it seems to hold, all living things within its withered hands, all hopes and wishes in its blighting grasp, all goals perceived but in its sightless eyes. Wow! The frail, the helpless, and the sick bow down before its image, thinking it alone is real, inevitable, worthy of their trust, for it alone will surely come. All things but death are seen to be unsure, too quickly lost, however hard to gain, uncertain in their outcome, apt to fail the hopes they once engendered, and to leave the taste of dust and ashes in their wake, in place of aspirations and of dreams. But death is counted on, for it will come with certain footsteps when the time has come for its arrival. It will never fail to take all life as hostage to itself. Would you bow down to idols such as this? Here is the strength and might of God Himself perceived within an idol made of dust. Here is the opposite of God proclaimed as Lord of all creation, stronger than God's will for life, the endlessness of love and heaven's perfect, changeless constancy. Here is the will of Father and of the Son defeated finally and laid to rest beneath the headstone death is placed upon the body of the Holy Son of God. Unholy in defeat, he has become what death would have him be. His epitaph, which death itself has written, gives no name to him, for he has passed to dust. It says but this, here lies a witness, God is dead. And this it writes again and still again, while all the while its worshippers agree, and kneeling down with foreheads to the ground, they whisper fearfully that it is so. Listen, it is impossible to worship or acknowledge death in any form and still select a few you would not cherish and would yet avoid while still believing in the rest. For death is total. Either all things die or else they live and cannot die. No compromise in this is possible. For here again we see an obvious position which we must accept if we be sane. What contradicts one thought entirely cannot be true unless its opposite is proven false. The idea of the death of God is so preposterous that even the insane have difficulty in believing it, for it implies that God was once alive and somehow perished, killed apparently by those who did not want him to survive. Their stronger will could triumph over his, and so eternal life give way to death, and with the Father died the Son as well. Death's worshippers may be afraid, and yet can thoughts like these be fearful? If they saw that it is only this which they believed, they would be instantly released. And you will show them this today. There is no death, and we renounce it now in every form, for their salvation and our own as well. God made not death. Whatever form it takes must therefore be an illusion. This the stand we take today, and it is given us to look past death and see the life beyond. Wow. That seems simple intellectually. It seems simple, the idea, and a lot of you will look and say, oh, I understand very well that I can't die. Okay? The manner in which you express that is a pretty good indication that you're going to. Okay? You know why? You are caught in the incredible dilemma of cause and effect. You actually believe that the things that you did yesterday are going to change what happens tomorrow. I assure you, you do. Okay? What are you doing? You're ordering your thoughts, you dummies. As soon as you do that, you're going to have to accept responsibility for what you're doing. If you accept responsibility for what you're doing, you're going to have to be what? Specific. You're going to have to learn the damn territory. Huh? You're going to try to get cash for the dry goods. Okay? You're going to have to decide what you want to be okay and what you don't want to be okay. Specifically. As long as you do that, you'll die. Sorry. Why? Because you've limited your own idea about yourself. What do we teach here? Love. What do we teach? Brotherhood. What do we teach? Forgiveness, you dumb. You look right at somebody. Okay? Are you finally an idea of what I think you are? Are there forms about you that I should look at? Do you sometimes get angry? Are you sometimes greedful? Okay? Do you sometimes love? Are you sometimes lustful? Okay? Do you sometimes get fat or thin or ugly? Okay? Do you hate sometimes? Do you love sometimes? Who am I really judging? Myself, of course. What have I done? Constructed an idea of who you are within the framework of my limited consciousness. Good grief. Do we we teach the think system here? Hell yeah, we teach the think system. You don't have to know the notes. Huh? Do you think that Beethoven wrote the Fifth Symphony by getting together a bunch of notes? No. People will take the symphony and divide it up and make parts out of it. That's not what it is. He used the think system. Okay? Mozart directly says, I use the think system. They says, when are you going to write this? When are you going to write it? He says, I've already written it. I've already thought about it. What he says. And it's complete in him. So we can't teach what? We have to come into the illusion and teach you specifically not to be specific. Okay? So I stand before you as what you might term an advanced teacher of God. At the very highest level, I will say to you, don't believe anything I tell you. You can only misconstruct me in your mind if you endow me with any qualities in regard to my relationship with you, unless you considered me to be the risen Christ. Then you will be, of course, right. Okay. I look at you as nothing but the Christ. This is Course in Miracles as taught at its highest level. It is impossible for you to even have an idea or conception of truth or unity or godliness without you literally being that thing. As Jesus would teach it in Course, you decide that it's there and then deny it. It's like walking around saying, I don't believe in God. That's absurd. See, God does not obviously require your belief in him. Okay? Your brother's godliness does not require that you believe that he is godly, darn it. He is, whether you think so or not. The dilemma is always yours in the denial of him. Love the Lord thy God with all thy might and power, and thy neighbor as thyself. But brother, that's only the basic teaching. The absurdity of present Christianity that somehow you can love Jesus and hate your brother attacked and his brother is insane. Of course. The high truth involved in Course in Miracles in what I teach you is precisely this. And this word is used several times in Course. Coming to be able to extend total love and recognition of who you are as a transformative quality. Okay? It occurred, for example, with the magician, the music man, when he is absolutely presented with love. He can't get away from it. He says to the little boy, he says, I'm going to be honest with you. He's going to really try and be honest here at this moment. The little boy says, are you a liar? He says, yeah. He says, and then he tries to justify himself. He says, well, you've got your band. And the little boy says, what band? He says, I always think there's a band. Then he says, well, I got my foot caught in the door and I can't get away. His foot is caught in love. So that's really what we teach. Forgiveness. Inevitably, what is taught in the illusion will be taken by the individual identity, and he will attempt and must attempt to establish it within the limited framework of his own individual consciousness. And he will give qualities to God. He cannot. Actually, what we teach is acceptance. Non-judgment. The realization that through surrender or acceptance there will occur in you a process of recognition of your true heritage. That's what we teach. The idea of icons, the idea of symbols in the illusion representing the truth are true, because it's only through the word that the idea can be firmly established. That can be expressed in a lot of ways. If I look at this candle, you and I may together, if we wish in communication, share the total recognition that this candle is the light of the world. I assure you that it is. Okay. Each one of you has within this mush of unreality, okay, a light, a spark. in your reestablishment to the great rays, this is Jesus' expression in Course in Miracles, okay? You facilitate in your microcosm the recognition of the mutuality of your identity with that of the entire universe. Okay, how do you do that? Through the subtraction of your karma, or your memory, or your dimness in regard to what you had constructed yourself to be. The highest manner in which that can be conveyed is the admonishment, as above, so below. As long as you have in your mind the idea of potential, you will think that something can be accomplished in the future or next week, and you have limited your idea about yourself. That is literally impossible. Okay? God, as represented, for example, in the Music Man, is finally action. The whole universe is nothing but a constant state of maximum total identity. Okay. There is nothing passive about consciousness, because consciousness finally is eternal creativity. It is the dilemma of the anvil. Okay? It is the dilemma of something static. It is the incredible idea that something can contain a potential not yet released that holds you in space-time. Do you see? Thinking that something can be static or brought about in the future is precisely the same idea as death. In reality, the most single active thought you can have is of death. The idea of death is totally active. Of course, what else would it be? You cannot think of potentiality without activating it. The universe is your idea in action. You, literally, you. Now, the problem you have in your dualistic thinking is you're willing to grant me that you can have a thought, okay, and that somehow you're pulling off a reservoir of thoughts, okay, and that you're going to take a little piece of that thought and activate it. Now you're caught. Why? Because you've got a God outside of you. You inevitably have constructed God as a potential. Not true. Okay? Until you, and in that sense, highest thought I can give you, until you activate it, it literally is no thing. Now, here's the problem. Since there is no such thing as no thing, actually, your idea of activating it is dualistic. I can't teach you this, but I assure you that it's true. God's will be done literally because it always has been done and is being done on a continuing basis. Get a hold of that if you can. If you pull that down a little bit, darn you, you're making your tomorrow. Quit doing it. Don't make your tomorrow. The script that you wrote for yourself is really junky. No matter how you may try and polish it up and tell me how much you love and what you think you are, there's nothing. All of your memories are what we call post-schism. They are since you have separated yourself from the single truth. If you want to read these chapters in Course in Miracles, have